Hey guys, so nice to have you here today. So, we're going to be cutting a beautiful pencil skirt with a ruffled front slit. And for this, we'll be needing this fabric. So, for the tutorial, I've already gone ahead to cut out the fabric I'll be needing for the ruffle, which I just set aside. So, for this skirt, basically, we'll be needing about 2.5 yards of Ankara fabric. So the length of my skirt is 37 inches. So you could make yours shorter, but I wanted mine to be a bit long because of the slit at the front, which I didn't want it to go um, beyond the knee. So that's the essence of me making my skirt long. So first thing I'm doing here now is cutting out the fabric I require for the front of our skirt. So I'm actually trying to fold it in the right proportion so as to be able to cut it out. Reasons being that I don't want to waste my fabric. So I folded it now, and the first measurement I'm taking on the top of it now is the waist circumference, which is 32 inches divided by 4. So I went ahead to take the hip measurement. So from the waist to the hip is 10 inches. So my hip circumference is 42 inches. So dividing that into 4 would give me 10.5 inches. So that's the measurement I've taken now. So I've not actually added the seam allowance. I'm just taking my actual measurement. Then I went to the base of my skirt. So the difference between the base of my skirt and my hip is just 1 inch. So if you want yours to be more pencil, you could make it 2 inch less than your hip measurements. So now I'm adding my extra seam allowance, which is vital when cutting out your patterns. So my seam allowance is 1.5. Okay. So next, I'll just go right ahead and cut it out, and then we'll be cutting out the back piece. So for this front, it's a one piece, a fabric folded in two. So we're not cutting that into two. But for the back, we're going to be cutting a fabric that had already been cut in two. Okay. So now I'll be folding this fabric again, and then I'll be cutting the back using the front, which I had already cut. The difference between the front and the back will be the zipper allowance. Okay, so I'm actually trying to fold the actual size of fabric I require to cut out the back of my skirt. So for my seam allowance, for my zipper allowance, I left out 2 inches. All right, and then I'll just go ahead to cut it. So now we're done cutting the front and the back piece of our pencil skirt. So the front is a one piece while the back is in two pieces of fabric. So next measurement I'm taking there will be the length of the slit, which is how deep you want your slit to be. I just wanted mine to be a little above the knee. Okay, for some persons they want it, farther above the knee, but mine was just a little above the knee. So having done that, I'll go ahead to cut out my lining piece with the same cutting of the actual fabric. So that will be all for the cutting of our skirt pattern. So please take note, I'm actually removing 1 inch from the front of our skirt. So I've taken 1 inch measurement at the middle there. So I'll just connect it to the waist point. The reasons why 1 inch is usually removed is so as to ensure that the skirt sits properly around the waist. That's just the reason. So the cutting is done on the front piece, not on the back. So now I'll be placing my front piece on the back piece, and then you would see the difference between both of them. So please ensure you replicate it when cutting yours. So that's the difference there. So now I've gone ahead to cut out my lining piece. So next I'll be attaching my lining to my fabric. Okay, so for this skirt, for some persons, I've done a video before where I showed how you could sew your pencil skirt without lining, but I usually prefer attaching linings to mine. It usually comes out nicer. So please take note that when attaching your lining, okay, after sewing the edge at the bottom, you fold your fabric in such a way that your lining becomes longer than the actual fabric. So you would have taken note of that when I did the rest. Okay, you can see what I just indicated now. So usually what I do is I make my lining piece a little bigger than the actual fabric. So as a beginner, it is important you do the same, so that after sewing your lining to your actual fabric, the material would not be squeezed in a particular form. So if it's bigger, you could trim out the excess as you see me do. Okay, so I did this because I know beginners watch this video a lot. So if you do this, you would not have to make the mistake of having your lining smaller than your fabric or your fabric smaller than the lining. Okay, so next I'll be turning the right sides out, and then I'll be placing the front fabric on the back fabric with the right sides facing each other. Okay, so that's what I'm doing right now. So in this particular video, I didn't iron out my fabric. It was very squeezed. So I advise a beginner to always iron out their fabric. It makes the work look neater. I've been out on power supply, and then this fuel issue is also affecting the use of generator. So you could simply finish your outfit before thinking of ironing it out. Okay, so long as they are properly sewn and not squeezed at any point. Okay, so now after placing the front fabric on the back fabric, please ensure you retake your measurements again. All right, if you're a beginner, please take your measurements again so as to know the exact size of allowances you'll be leaving out. All right, so use your measurements, your waist circumference, your hip circumference, and the base of your skirt measurements again. So I'm doing this, and as you can see, I'm having more than enough seam allowance. So you could make yours less. So if you're someone that usually adds so much weight, okay, so it is better to leave out enough seam allowance. So now I've gone ahead to sew both sides of my skirt. As you can see, I'm trying to arrange it so it will look nice. So next, I'll be joining or sewing the back piece together. So there's no opening at the bottom of this skirt at the back, okay, because we already have a slit at the front. So I'll just leave out the area where I'll be attaching my zipper. So I'm actually stitching the skirt down, as you can see. So the only opening we're having is the slit at the front and also the space for the zipper at the back. All right. So next, this little piece of fabric is what I'll be using as the band for the skirt. So it's simple. The weight of the fabric was about 6 inches, while the length was about 34 inches. Okay, so please ensure the length of the band is equal to the exact length of the waist of the skirt. So I've gone ahead to attach our waistband to the skirt, and this is what it's looking like. It's already looking neat. Okay, so the last and final thing here is going to be our ruffles. So for this particular ruffles I made on my sleeves, it was doubled. So you could make your a single piece of fabric that you'll be using to make your ruffle. So for this, it was double. So the length of this fabric was about 3 yards, while the width was about 8 inches. Okay, so that's for the bigger one, while the smaller one was about 5 inches. So now I'm actually trying to fold the edges, and then I'll go back to my sewing machine to sew it. So please ensure you do that. Sew around the edges of both fabric. Okay, as you see me indicate with my finger. And then next, I'm joining the fabric together. So for this particular ruffle, I did needle work. So I didn't bother to make loose stitches. So I used my needle to make my gathers, because I actually joined the fabric together. So if I had gone to the machine to run a loose stitch on it, it would also have been difficult for me to pull the thread. So instead, I decided to do needlework gather method. So this is what and how it is done, and then it will come out looking also as good as that done with a sewing machine. So I'm going to do this for the entire length of this fabric, and then I'm going to try to spread it uniformly, gradually on my slit, and then I'll run my stitch on it. And that will be all for the making of the video. So now I'm done making my ruffles. Okay, so it's looking a bit shorter. So as I go over to the machine to attach my ruffles on my slit skirt, it will be arranged properly and spread across evenly. So now I'm placing it on the slit area. Okay, so I would be spreading it gradually, and then I'll go over to the sewing machine. So the gathers I made, the fabric I used was actually enough for this gather. So like I said, it was about 3 yards of length. So please ensure you do the same. And if you want yours to be very thick, you could use about 3.5 yards or a little bit more. So now that is basically all for the making of this pencil skirt with ruffled front slit. So the last and final thing I did was to attach my zipper at the back, and my skirt was ready, and it actually came out nice. And when I actually put this on, I've had like 3 persons saying, I want you to make me this skirt. So in my next tutorial video, I'm going to be showing us how to draft or how to cut and sew um, a dungarees skirt with ruffles at the base of it. So please look out for that video. So at this point, if you haven't subscribed yet, kindly subscribe and give us a like. We love it and would love to see you in our next video. So till then,